Afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to tell you about the budget that the committee will present this afternoon. First, I want to make the point that even though we did not embrace the governor's proposed additional $1 billion in tax reductions, I'll remind you that we negotiated $4 billion in tax relief when the budget was adopted just a few months ago. To go further at this time would be premature, given the inflationary pressures our economy has been experiencing. And I believe we are still catching up from the reductions made during the Great Recession. What you have often heard me talk about as promises kept to the people of Virginia as we restore these items. This budget makes critical investments in education, behavioral health, and safer communities at a time when these partnerships must be strengthened to improve the lives of our citizens, and especially of our children, who clearly suffered the most during the pandemic and are still experiencing learning loss and the emotional tolls of that time period. Today, we put down a marker to do an additional $1 billion for K-12 education. I'll repeat that, $1 billion for K-12 education to make sure our children are receiving the support they need academically and emotionally. We are funding more positions in the classroom to assist teachers and provide extra instructional support to students. We also want to keep the best teachers in our schools with additional compensation and bonuses provided in our budget, something we also prioritized for our state employees. In public safety and human services, we further invest in items that will make the Commonwealth safer and provide supports for mental health in schools and in the community, including significant expansion of permanent supportive housing for those with mental illness. We also ensure our secondary school children can attend college by making it more affordable, with more than $276 million for operating, financial aid, and workforce funding, bringing the biennial total for higher education to over $1 billion. Affordable access is critical as we prepare our workforce for the jobs of the future. We will be examining this area closely going forward to align our funding and enrollment to keep Virginia the best place to live and work. I'm now going to turn the gavel over to my co-chair, Senator Barker, to discuss other priorities.
Today, I want to emphasize significant investments in economic development and transportation, areas that are also critical for a successful Commonwealth like Virginia. We continue to prioritize economic development through the Business Ready Sites program, specific performance-based incentives for companies that locate in Virginia, and using data to inform our decisions, especially as we transform our workforce for the future. To be fiscally prudent, with unprecedented one-time resources, we have placed a marker on almost $1 billion in contingent items to ensure these resources will be dedicated to mostly one-time uses. The contingent items include additional funding for higher education, child care provider subsidies, the Housing Trust Fund, acceleration of I-81 improvements, high-hazard dam repairs, and additional deposit to the Virginia retirement system, school construction improvements, and developmental disability waiver services. We believe we have delivered on prioritizing for the people of Virginia, and we look forward to hearing from our subcommittee chairs who have worked diligently to bring before you this afternoon their recommendations for amendments to the biennial budget, Senate Bill 800. I thank them for their tireless efforts to produce the subcommittee reports. Additional priorities of committee members are reflected in the subcommittee reports that will follow. We will hear briefly from each subcommittee chair and after the report has been presented, I will ask that the report and related amendments be accepted. After all the subcommittee reports have been issued, I'll ask that the introduced Senate Bill 800 be amended in accordance with the subcommittee reports and that the bill as amended be reported. Now that I have outlined the committee priorities and the process, I ask Senator Saslaw to provide the report of the K-12 Education Subcommittee.
Thank you, Chairman Barker, Chairman Howe. Appreciate the opportunity. Your subcommittee has reviewed the governor's introduced budget for public education. As the subcommittee developed its recommendations, our major focus was on support for the teachers and the school staff to help the students succeed. Overall, our recommendations provide an additional $588.7 million to direct aid over the biennium. And when you combine that with the additional $443.9 million that was in the introduced budget, this brings the total new funding to a little over $1 billion. When combined with the adopted increases in the current budget, that's for the biennium, you're looking at $3.9 billion in public education. To better support our teachers, we're proposing $270.6 million to fully lift the support position cap and $56.9 million to ensure that students have access to trained specialized support staff. Combined, these investments will provide additional resources to schools and alleviate the pressure on the teachers and staff to meet the growing needs of the students. To help our students with the highest learning needs and to respond to the learning loss as a result of the pandemic, we provide $38.6 million to support more instructional aids in the classroom and $37 million to increase the at-risk add-on, and $24.3 million to support English language learners. We continue to focus on improving reading literacy by including another $27.5 million on top of that to expand the reading specialists through the 8th grade. To recognize the importance of our teachers and staff, and this really is something we need to remember, we recommended an additional 2% salary increase in FY 2024, and that's over the 5 that we recommended before. This provides an increase of 7% beginning July 1st of this year, and we're also proposing to fund a $1,000 bonus for the instruction and support positions, in other words, the classroom teachers and the support positions. And the bonus would come in December. These actions will help us support the teachers and staff and demonstrate the value of what teachers do to educate the next generation. Regarding school safety and security and the recent incidents in the Newport News and the many concerns across the state, the need to support efforts to help students, teachers, and staff feel safe. As a result, we're proposing $50 million in grants to focus on the equipment, school modifications to improve school modifications to improve school security. Additionally, there are contingent allocations of $100 million for school construction grants and $80 million to support child care providers once the federal relief funds are exhausted. Lastly, the recent announcement of the unintentional error in the direct aid calculation tool that made the headlines last week, which has put a potentially a hell of a burden on some of our school divisions. We're providing $58 million to hold the divisions harmless in FY 2023 and additional new funding in FY 24 that will ease any financial pressures to the localities. The subcommittee continues with its commitment to support and respond to the challenge faced by our students and our educators. And I want to thank the subcommittee members, and I especially want to thank the staff. You all just have done a super job. And I look forward to continue our ongoing work regarding the future of public education in the Commonwealth. I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments. This completes the report of your K-12 subcommittee. And I would move the adoption.
Well, we do the options again, all the reports. Yeah. Where's Louise?
You move. Second.
She's over there.
Go on. We
It's a voice vote.
after each, okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
before Senator Sasslaw sits down and may not be able to get up, I think we ought to all wish him a happy 40th, 39th birthday. Your 40th, 39th birthday.
More than that.
Good afternoon, co-chairs and members of the committee. The Public Safety Subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budgets for the agencies of Public Safety and Homeland Security and Veterans and Defense Affairs. A major focus of the subcommittee was to make our communities safer. Too many families have lost their loved ones because of gun violence epidemic. We need to provide more community-based services, especially for our youth. May I repeat? We need to provide more community-based services, especially for our youth. To that end, the subcommittee recommends $30 million to expand the Firearm Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant Fund, provide additional grants to hard-hit localities, and establish the Office of Safer Communities at the Department of Criminal Justice Services. The initiatives complements $3 million in new youth delinquency prevention grants, as well as a significant investment in education and mental health that are recommended by other subcommittees. Law enforcement officers must be partners for making communities safe and ensuring a brighter tomorrow. The subcommittee maintains many of the important investments supporting our frontline public safety officers, including correctional officers and state and local police. The subcommittee also recommends an additional $2 million for the Aid to Localities, or 599 program, building on the historic increase of nearly $50 million adopted last year. Supporting Virginia's dedicated law enforcement officers reinforces a positive environment for both officers and those that they serve. As we invest in services to make our communities safer and prevent future violence, we must also ensure support for victims today. The subcommittee report includes more than $13 million in funding for victims and witnesses of mass violence, domestic violence, and other crimes. Co-chairs, this concludes the Public Safety Subcommittee report. I hope it will be the pleasure of the subcommittee to adopt our recommendations and amendments.
Thank you.
Is there a second to adopting? It's been moved and seconded that the Public Safety Subcommittee report be agreed to. All in favor, say aye. 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 Thank you, Louise.
Madam Co-Chair and members of the committee, our Transportation Subcommittee has reviewed the governor's introduced budget for the Office of Transportation. Last year, the General Assembly was able to dedicate funding towards several high-priority transportation projects. I am pleased that our investments in making it safer and easier for Virginians to travel the state is paying significant dividends. Major projects such as opening additional lanes on I-66 outside the Beltway and widening Interstate 64 are being completed, and others are well underway. Our transportation system is very good, and we want to keep it that way, and we want to keep the highways, the port, passenger rail, space, and other aspects of our transportation system continuing to move forward. Our proposed amendments allow us to take advantage of present opportunities and chart a course for future successes. Subcommittee highlights include, from contingent amounts, $250 million for high-priority capital improvement projects to Interstate 81 in the Stanton area. These projects have been identified in the I-81 Capital Improvement Plan to address delays, reduce crashes, and provide jobs. $10 million to complete planning, design, and the acquisition to develop a second inland port facility in the Mount Rogers Planning District, the area of the state that was identified as being well-positioned for the transfer of cargo coming from and going to the coast. $7.5 million to construct a cruise ship, port of call pier, and related visitor support and tourism facilities on the York River. And $1 million for hangar construction at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Accomack County. Improving transit accessibility and increase zero-emission transit fleets through additional flexibility in the Transit Ridership Incentive Fund. In addition to making improvements today, it is important to make long-term plans for transportation. The subcommittee budget amendments partially reverse a portion of the proposed transfer from the Commonwealth Transportation Fund to the Transportation Partnership Opportunity Fund. This will ensure there are significant resources to quickly respond to economic development opportunities while protecting funds designated for making our highways and streets safer, providing transit services, and maintaining our transportation infrastructure. Madam Chair, this completes the report of your Transportation Subcommittee. I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that the Transportation Subcommittee report be adopted. All in favor, say aye. 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 Anybody opposed? It's adopted.
Co-chairs and members of the committee. The Capital Outlay Subcommittee worked diligently to review the introduced budget as it relates to capital outlay. As you will recall, the introduced budget proposed almost $950 million over the biennium in additional capital outlay spending, with almost $605 million in general fund cash, $212 million in non-general fund cash, and $98 million in non-D bond proceeds. As introduced, the total general fund cash for capital outlay totaled almost $2.7 billion and includes zero tax-supported debt for state capital outlay projects. This really underscores the Commonwealth's abundant resources to meet our operating commitments while still being able to pay as you go for capital work. Over the past year, we have understood the cost increases to projects as contracts were signed. These projects continue to represent our commitments, and in most cases, the cost increases are solely due to inflation and supply chain issues. Last year, the General Assembly took the sensible first step by including $350 million in the budget for project supplements, and we fully endorse the governor's proposed additional $400 million for this purpose. The subcommittee balanced the need for additional capital outlay with the many unknowns in our currently committed projects. The priority of the Commonwealth should always be focused on maintaining our existing capital infrastructure and to resist the desire to move forward on construction projects before we have sufficiently preserved our existing buildings. Therefore, your subcommittee concentrated our attention on projects related to improvements, deferred maintenance, and critical agency projects. As always, we maintained our longstanding practice of strong fiscal management and resisted the urge to issue more debt, even if it's available, in our debt capacity model. With over $4 billion in unauthorized or authorized but unissued debt, we must continue managing the pipeline for construction projects and refrain from using additional debt capacity when interest rates are higher and there is uncertainty in the economy. Our recommended amendments include overall general fund cash and capital outlay by an increasing by $92.1 million as compared to the introduced budget. We provide $50 million for additional project supplements, bringing the total supplement pool to $800 million over the biennium. We support projects focused on improvements and infrastructure upgrades. We recommend an additional $8.6 million from the general fund for detailed planning for 5 higher education projects. We recommend $20 million from the general fund for local stormwater assistance projects to meet our environmental protection goals. This completes the report of the Capital Outlay Subcommittee. And I want to conclude by expressing my extreme gratitude to all the members for your diligent work and especially the staff. I move that we adopt the subcommittee report.
It's been moved and seconded the subcommittee report be agreed to. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's agreed to.
Co-chairs and members of the committee, your subcommittee reviewed the governor's proposed budget for higher education. The budget we adopted last year shows significant investments in our priority areas of affordability, access, completion, and workforce development. Our subcommittee recommendations continue to focus on these priority areas through increased investments in financial aid, institutional support, and workforce initiatives. In total, we propose an investment of $279.1 million over the biennium. When you include the investments in Chapter 2, 2022 Special Session 1, the overall total for the biennium is $1.13 billion. To better assist our low and middle income students, the subcommittee recommends an additional $75 million in need-based financial aid and an additional $25 million in a Pell Initiative to attract and retain low-income students. Over time, our state financial aid has not kept up with the growth in tuition and fees. Higher education opens doors to a better quality of life, and we want students and parents to know we are working to remove barriers to achieving a brighter future. Not only will this help individuals, but it will also help our communities and our Commonwealth. To support our institutions, we recommend $149.8 million in funding for operations. The Commonwealth has long had a goal to support 2/3 of the cost of higher education for Virginia students. While recent investments have helped, we have lagged in achieving our goal. Today's investments will allow institutions to meet the growing need for student support services, address increased costs resulting from inflation, refine or create programs that meet current and future workforce needs, and minimize the need to raise tuition and fees while moving us closer to that goal. To address workforce needs, we know there are jobs that need to be filled in the Commonwealth, which require a post-secondary credential. We also face critical shortages in certain areas, such as healthcare. As a result, we recommend $25 million to invest in workforce programs at the community colleges, $5.8 million to support nursing programs at our public institutions, and $2 million to increase industry-based credentials through the New Economy Workforce Credential Grant Program. Additionally, there are contingent allocations of $100 million to continue to support access and affordability. Finally, at the annual retreat in the fall, we heard about our declining population and potential impacts on higher education. We also know that we need to update our models to estimate costs and resource needs to better plan for enrollment changes. We propose to reconvene our joint subcommittee to focus on higher education costs, funding, performance, and enrollment planning to guide this effort. This committee will build on the work of the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia, the recent recommendations by JLARC on financial aid and dual enrollment, and other research to help us maintain our world-class system of higher education in Virginia. I want to thank the staff and our subcommittee members for their outstanding work in putting together this proposal. This concludes our report of the Higher Education Subcommittee, and we hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments. And I move this.
It's been moved and seconded that the Higher Education Subcommittee report be agreed to. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Senator Lott.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, 7 years ago, wrong speech. Your subcommittee has reviewed the provisions of Senate Bill 800 for those portions of the budget that fall under the subcommittee on general government. The areas contained within general government cross 6 secretariats, more than 40 agencies, dozens of commissions and boards, and obviously local constitutional officers. Above all, the subcommittee is focused on recognizing the value of the Commonwealth's public workforce as well as our local workforces that work for public officials. To that end, I would briefly like to highlight a few of the key recommendations of the subcommittee, particularly within the areas of the Judicial Department, Administration, and Central Appropriations. In recognition of the employees who serve the Commonwealth, the subcommittee recommends $107 million be set aside to ensure that our state employees, state-supported local employees, full-time and adjunct faculty, and graduate teaching assistants can count on a 7% pay increase next year, which will be the 5% pay increase already allocated plus a 2% add-on. In addition, those same state employees our state employees will also be receiving a $1,000 bonus on December 1, 2023. Under the Judicial Department, we have included an additional $8.4 million to basically raise the pay of substitute, retired, and recalled judges, district court clerks, and citizens fulfilling their civic duties as jurors, which are to be compensated for their time. Likewise, under the Administration Secretary, we recommend the addition of $12.3 million to better support our local commissioners of revenue, treasurers, Commonwealth's attorneys, circuit court clerks, and regional jail officers. With an additional $8.8 million, the subcommittee recommends increasing support to local jails by raising the per diem for each inmate from $4 to $6, which makes up 50% of the shortfall that we had back during the Great Recession. Finally, to ensure that we as a Commonwealth continue to meet our responsibilities to our retired public servants, the subcommittee proposes a contingency deposit of $250 million to make an additional payment towards our unfunded liabilities under the Virginia retirement system. Madam Chair, I hope it is the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That's adopted. Proceed.
All set?
Yes.
Very good. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, your subcommittee has carefully reviewed the governor's introduced budget for the Secretariats of Agriculture and Forestry, Commerce and Trade, Labor, and Natural Resources. We have thoughtfully considered these proposals along with those offered by our Senate colleagues. Our Commonwealth and its people have so much to offer. It is our job to continue delivering on our shared values. All Virginians deserve an affordable, safe place to live. Our subcommittee endorsed $150 million from a contingent amount for the Housing Trust Fund. In addition, funding is provided to establish a manufactured home parks affordability housing pilot that will provide grants to homeowners associations and nonprofits who promise to maintain the property as a mobile home park for 30 years. Much of the affordability crisis is driven by housing stock challenges, and the subcommittee has approved development of a residential sites and structures locator to help match available land and buildings. Virginia is regionally diverse, and all citizens should have access to new technology and opportunities. The subcommittee has redirected funding to the Virginia Business Ready Sites Program to focus on local economic development authorities and making decisions and acquiring sites for business prospects. In addition, flexibility is added to the broadband line extension program to enhance access in rural areas, regardless of income, and initial support is provided to establish the electric vehicle infrastructure program so that rural areas can benefit and have access to new technologies. Virginians value our environment and natural resources, and the subcommittee recommends providing $102.9 million for new investments in the areas of natural and historic resources and agriculture and forestry. Included in that amount is $50 million from a contingent amount for soil and water conservation districts, dam repairs, and enhancements. Protecting and preserving our natural resources is only possible with the right tools in place, and a total of $4.2 million across 4 agencies is dedicated to invasive species detection and eradication. Additionally, funding of $12.9 million is recommended to incentivize the adoption of agriculture best management practices, and support is also provided to upgrade the conservation suite system used to monitor and document our progress. I would like to thank our co-chairs, Senator Howell and Barker, and the staff, but I would also like to thank individually Senators Hanger and Ruff, whose vast knowledge and experience made the subcommittee process both substantive and expeditious. This completes the report of the Economic Development and Natural Resources Committee. I hope it will be the pleasure of the committee to adopt our amendments.
Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The amendments are adopted.
Thank you, Committee Chairs Howell and Barker and members of the committee. I'm pleased, actually, I'm very excited at this moment to present the report of the Health and Human Services Subcommittee. The subcommittee has reviewed the governor's proposed budget for Senate Bill 800 and numerous requests for the agencies in health and human resources. In the recommendations before you, the subcommittee has focused on directing significant investments in the behavioral health system, increasing Medicaid provider rates, and improving the healthcare workforce pipeline to address critical shortages across the Commonwealth. The subcommittee's recommendations include over $423 million. In addition, general fund investments in health and human resources that, combined with the adopted amendments in the introduced budget, total nearly $850 million. I also am pleased to announce the subcommittee recommendations for behavioral health total over $370 million, a significant investment to strengthen the community-based services critical to so many Virginians in need. This funding includes $50 million to nearly double the budget for permanent supportive housing, $50 million to increase compensation for our community service boards to improve staff recruitment and retention, and over $54 million to increase rates for Medicaid behavioral health services, and additional investments to improve our crisis system. I think these investments, coupled with some of the legislative initiatives that we're currently moving through, will greatly improve the trajectory of our behavioral health system. You may recall from last year, the subcommittee approved significant rate increases for a variety of Medicaid provider rates to address the effects of inflation and labor shortages that adversely impacts the ability of lower-income Virginians to access the needed health care services. The subcommittee recommends additional rate increases for personal care, developmental disability services, physicians, nursing facilities, behavioral health services, and durable medical equipment, among several others. The subcommittee carefully evaluated initiatives to help increase the pipeline for healthcare workforce, a critical issue the Commonwealth needs to address. The subcommittee adopts nearly $40 million in initiatives to address the nursing shortage and provide financial incentives for individuals training to become behavioral health providers. These investments in workforce come at a critical time and should help to increase the number of practitioners in the field. Other recommendations I will highlight include a contingent amount of 500 additional developmental disability waiver slots, which would put the total in this current budget at 1,600 if those 500 come to fruition. In addition, resources are included for the looming task of redetermining eligibility for everyone on Medicaid as the restrictions imposed during the public health emergency come to an end. Furthermore, I am pleased that the recommendations before you include a significant increase in the auxiliary rate grants to low-income Virginians who need assisted living services. This action is long overdue. I would note probably 18 years overdue from when we worked on this previously. There are other recommendations, including investing in our public health and social services systems and providing needed assistance to people with disabilities. The members of this subcommittee understand all too well the many needs and challenges in developing funding recommendations in the health and human resources area. As I conclude, I want to thank all of the members of the subcommittee who were engaged on this subject. It always takes us a lot of time to go through all the lines related to this subject area, and I appreciate the contributions and efforts of each subcommittee member. In addition, our staff person, Mike Tweedy, always does an excellent job. Obviously helped in repairing these remarks that I'm making, except he left out some of the more colorful language that they wrote in for Senator Saslaw. At any rate, really proud of this report, Mr. Chairman, and I move its adoption.
All right, is there a second? Okay, second. The motion's been seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That report is adopted.
I'd like to briefly give you an overview of the resources that we are having in this budget. Our general fund resources totaled $35.1 billion in fiscal year 2023 and $29.1 billion in fiscal year 2024. The net changes to the general fund resources total an increase of $1 billion general fund over the biennium. That is accounted for with an increase of $1 billion general fund from removing assumed tax policy actions in the introduced budget, an increase of 23.1 general fund to reflect conformity with the federal tax provisions in fiscal year 2024, a reduction of $13 million to reflect deduction of sports betting bonuses and promotions, a reduction of $15 million to reflect increased historic rehabilitation tax credits, a reduction of $27 million to reflect changes in income apportionment for affiliated corporations with 80% of their sales derived from retail activities, and finally, a reduction of $18 million to reflect changes in income apportionment for the internet route infrastructure provider. That completes the resources.
All right.
Also, I would very much like to reiterate what every subcommittee chair has said in one way or another, but to thank our very talented and tireless staff under the very able leadership of
They
April.
retired last night. All right, we have a motion to accept the resources report. Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, we have adopted all the amendments that have been offered. And when my co-chair gets back up here, she can take over and we can move along on finally adopting everything, so. Yeah. Yeah, you just need to make the motion to adopt.
Okay.
Senate Bill 800.
Madam Chair?
Senator Eben.
I don't know that we adopted the K through 12 report in our, earlier in our work. Did we take a vote on that one?
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Senator Sasslaw,
You're covered.
yeah, you're covered.
Okay, so now I'd like to ask that the introduced Senate Bill 800 be amended in accordance with the subcommittee reports.
We've done that.
And that the bill as amended be reported.
All right. Is there a second? All right. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote on the board.
Aye 16, no 0.
The bill is reported. Thank you, everyone.
It's a good budget.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? All right. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. We are adjourned.